First contact through compassion. The Arcadian ship drifted helplessly through the void, its crystalline hull crackling with failing energy fields. Captain Xerxes watched the last reserves of their life support system drain away on the command center's displays. The proud vessel, once the flagship of the Arcadian exploration fleet, now reduced to little more than a floating tomb. They had exhausted all options, sent out every distress signal their damaged communications could manage, but in this uncharted region of space, help seemed impossible. Final emergency protocols initiated, Captain. First Officer Xerxes reported, her voice steady despite the growing frost on her scaled skin. We have approximately 6 hours of breathable atmosphere remaining. Xerxes nodded, maintaining the stoic demeanor expected of an Arcadian captain. Their species had survived for millennia by following one simple rule: never show weakness. It was the foundation of their civilization, the core of their diplomatic doctrine, and the reason they now faced extinction in the cold embrace of space. The ship's sensors suddenly flared to life, causing several crew members to jump at their stations. An unknown vessel was approaching. Fast. Xerxes felt his secondary heart begin to race. In their current state, they couldn't even raise their defensive shields. Unknown configuration. The tactical officer announced, confusion evident in his tone. It's broadcasting on all frequencies. They're trying to communicate. The message that came through their failing communication system was unlike anything the Arcadians had ever encountered. This is the Earth vessel Mercy's Hand. We've detected your ship is in distress. We're here to help. Please remain calm. Help. The concept was almost foreign to their species. In Arcadian culture, accepting assistance was tantamount to accepting subjugation. But as the strange vessel drew closer, Xerxes realized they had no choice. The Earth ship was smaller than their own, its design completely alien to anything in their database. It maneuvered with surprising grace, coming alongside the dying Arcadian vessel. What happened next would be recorded in both species' histories as the moment that changed everything. The humans didn't demand surrender. They didn't negotiate terms. They simply began helping. Teams in environmental suits crossed the void between ships, bringing with them portable life support units, emergency repair equipment, and most surprisingly, containers of what they called hot soup. You must be freezing, the human team leader said through the translator, handing out thermal blankets to the shocked Arcadian crew. Don't worry about protocol right now. Staying alive is what matters. The Arcadian officers watched in stunned silence as the humans worked tirelessly to repair their critical systems. These aliens violated every principle of interspecies contact their civilization had established. They shared their technology freely, offered medical assistance without requesting anything in return, and seemed genuinely concerned about the comfort of complete strangers. Why? Xerxes finally asked the human leader, unable to contain his curiosity any longer. Why help us? You know nothing about our species. We could be your enemies. The human smiled. An expression that would later be extensively analyzed by Arcadian xenologists. Because you needed help, she said simply. That's reason enough. This response sent shockwaves through the Arcadian command structure. Their linguists insisted something had been lost in translation. Their strategic analysts searched for hidden meanings. Their philosophers debated the implications for cycles afterward. As the humans completed their repairs and prepared to depart, they left behind not just a functioning ship, but also detailed repair manuals, emergency supplies, and several containers of what they called comfort food. The Arcadian crew was left with a functioning vessel, restored life support, and a completely shattered worldview. When Xerxes filed his report to the Arcadian High Command, he struggled to convey the magnitude of what had occurred. How could he explain that the most powerful force they had encountered in space wasn't advanced weapons or superior technology, but simple kindness freely given? The report ended with a warning that would echo through the halls of power across the galaxy. We have encountered a species that helps without cause, gives without requirement, and chose strength through compassion. They call themselves humans, and they are unlike anything we have ever known. May the stars help us all. The diplomatic paradox. The Grand Assembly of the Galactic Council had never been so crowded. Representatives from 37 spacefaring civilizations packed the massive chamber, their attention fixed on the holographic display showing the latest human incident. Ambassador Lix of the Meridian Consortium adjusted her sensory membranes, still struggling to process what she was witnessing. The humans had just prevented a devastating asteroid collision with the colony world of New Xerxes, a planet belonging to the Verax, a species that had explicitly rejected human diplomatic overtures just months earlier. Instead of letting the Verax face the consequences of their isolation, humanity had launched a massive defensive operation, destroying the asteroid and preventing the extinction of millions. This behavior defies all rational analysis, declared Supreme Analyst Koth of the Verax, his crystalline form vibrating with distress. We informed them that we wanted no contact. We rejected their trade proposals. We even accused them of biological warfare when they tried to send us medical supplies during the Great Plague. And yet, they saved us anyway. The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. The Verax weren't the first species to experience this bewildering phenomenon. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy, humans providing emergency aid to hostile worlds, sharing technological innovations without demanding payment, and even risking their own lives to save other species' cultural artifacts. There must be an explanation, insisted Director Venn of the Strategic Evaluation Committee, her tentacles writhing in agitation. No species acts without self-interest. It violates the fundamental laws of evolutionary survival. A junior analyst was brought forward, trembling slightly as she presented her findings. "We've been studying human historical records," she began. "They appear to have a concept they call paying it forward. The theory is that by helping others without expectation of return, they create a culture of assistance that might benefit them or others in the future. But that's not even the most disturbing part." The assembly waited in tense silence as she gathered her courage to continue. "They appear to derive neurochemical pleasure from helping others. Our scans show increased dopamine and serotonin release in human brains when they perform acts of kindness. They've essentially evolved to be addicted to helping." The revelation caused chaos in the chamber. The hive mind of Sector 7 began emergency calculations to determine if altruism could be contagious. The mechanoids of Ta Sidi initiated quarantine protocols against what they termed emotional warfare. Ambassador Lix watched as the debate spiraled into increasingly bizarre theories. Some suggested humans were playing an impossibly long game of psychological manipulation. Others proposed they were harvesting some unknown energy from acts of kindness. The Quantum Consciousness Collective was convinced humans existed simultaneously in multiple moral dimensions. The truth that humans simply believed helping others was the right thing to do was considered too implausible to even discuss. As the assembly argued, new reports continued to arrive. Humans had developed a cure for a devastating plague and were distributing it freely to affected worlds. They had established an interstellar emergency response network that would answer any distress call, regardless of the caller's species or political alignment. They were even offering free education to any species that wanted to learn about Earth's culture and technology. "Don't you see what they're doing?" shouted Representative Zix of the warrior clans, pounding his armored fist on the podium. "They're making themselves indispensable. Soon, the galaxy will depend on their generosity." And then, he left the dire implications hanging in the air. But the most troubling development came from the synthetic logic arrays of Rigel. They had been analyzing human behavior patterns and reached a startling conclusion. Human kindness was exponential. Each act of assistance seemed to inspire others, creating a cascade effect that threatened to reshape the very fabric of galactic society. "Their influence is spreading," warned the Logic Array's spokesperson, its metallic voice resonating with concern. We've documented 17 cases of other species beginning to emulate human behavioral patterns. 3 civilizations have already established their own emergency response fleets. The Arcadians have opened their hospitals to off-worlders. The assembly fell silent at this news. The Arcadians were known throughout the galaxy for their strict policy of self-reliance. If even they were succumbing to human influence, what hope did anyone have? Ambassador Lix watched as the greatest minds in the galaxy struggled to comprehend a force that defied their fundamental understanding of the universe. Humanity had introduced something more devastating than any weapon, more disruptive than any technology. They had introduced the idea that helping others could be its own reward. As she prepared her report to the Meridian Consortium, Lix couldn't shake the feeling that they were all missing something profound. The Avalon Initiative. The emergency session of the Galactic Security Council began with what many species would later describe as an act of psychological warfare. The human representative brought cookies. "Before we begin," Ambassador Sarah Chen said, placing the plate on the central table, "I thought everyone might enjoy these. My grandmother's recipe." Several representatives discreetly activated their poison detection devices. The real shock, however, came moments later when she unveiled humanity's latest project. The massive hologram filling the chamber showed a fleet of vessels larger than anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. But they weren't warships. "We call it the Avalon Initiative," Chen explained, as images of massive environmental ships, mobile habitats, and terraforming platforms filled the air. "We've detected 17 species across the galaxy facing extinction-level events within the next century. These range from dying stars to collapsing ecosystems. The initiative aims to save them all." The silence that followed was deafening. The mechanoid representative was the first to speak, its voice modulator crackling with static. "You intend to save all of them, without consideration for their strategic value or technological advancement?" "Of course," Chen replied, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. "Every species has the right to survive." The Quantum Consciousness Collective immediately initiated an emergency probability analysis. The hive mind of Sector 7 began calculating the resource expenditure. The Strategic Alliance's representatives huddled together, frantically discussing the political implications. "The resources required for such an endeavor," began High Commander Vex of the Militant Systems, his scales shifting colors rapidly in distress, "are considerable," Chen acknowledged. "That's why we're inviting all spacefaring civilizations to join us, though we're prepared to proceed alone if necessary." That last statement sent ripples of panic through the assembly. Humans were willing to bankrupt themselves to save species they'd never met, species that couldn't possibly repay them. The implications were staggering. The project details only made things worse. Humanity wasn't just offering evacuation. They were promising to recreate each species' native environment, preserve their cultural heritage, and ensure their long-term survival. The engineering requirements alone were mind-boggling. "And what do you want in return?" demanded Ambassador Zix of the Trade Federation, certain there must be a catch. Chen's reply would be debated in diplomatic circles for years to come. "We want you to live. That's all." The logical synthesis units immediately requested a clarification, certain something had been lost in translation. The empathic collective of Rigel VII began experiencing what they termed emotional overflow, trying to process the concept. As the council descended into chaos, a junior analyst from the Arcadian delegation made a disturbing discovery. "They're already building the ships," she announced, her voice trembling. "These aren't theoretical plans. Look at the construction timestamps. They began the moment they detected the first civilization at risk." The revelation hit the assembly like a quantum torpedo. Humanity hadn't come to ask permission or seek approval. They weren't negotiating. They were simply informing the galaxy of what they intended to do. The Strategic Alliance's worst fears were confirmed when they accessed the human construction networks. The Avalon fleet wasn't just being built, it was being built with redundancy. For every ship needed, Humans were constructing too. Their logistics included contingencies for species that might initially refuse help but change their minds later. "This is unprecedented," declared the archive keeper of the ancient races, its crystalline form vibrating with emotion. "In all recorded history, no species has attempted anything of this scale without direct benefit to themselves." The humans had even developed specialized ships for species they hadn't contacted yet, anticipating future discoveries of civilizations in need. The level of planning and resources involved suggested either insanity or a degree of compassion that defied conventional understanding. As the council argued, Chen calmly served tea, after allowing the requisite security scans, and answered questions about the initiative's logistics. Yes, they had considered cultural preservation. Yes, they had plans for species with unique biological needs. Yes, they were willing to share all the technology involved. But why? The question came from an unexpected source, a usually silent representative of the observer caste. Why expend such resources on the survival of others? Chen's answer was simple: because we can. And because if we don't, who will? The meeting ended with no consensus, but humanity didn't seem to care. The Avalon fleet continued to grow in orbital shipyards across Earth's sphere of influence. Recruitment centers opened across human space, calling for volunteers willing to spend decades helping other species rebuild their civilizations. The galaxy watched in growing alarm as humans demonstrated once again that their greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their resources. It was their unlimited capacity to care about others. And nothing, it seemed, could stop them from using it. The breaking point. The Galactic Security Council's emergency bunker hadn't been used in over 3 centuries. Now it was filled to capacity as representatives from across known space gathered to address what many were calling the human crisis. Supreme Strategist Ven of the Militant Systems manipulated the holographic display with trembling appendages. "The situation has become untenable," she declared. "Observe the latest incident." The display showed a massive human rescue operation underway in the Sickness Void, a region of space so dangerous that even automated probes avoided it. The humans had discovered a dying civilization there, one that had never achieved spaceflight. Instead of following standard protocol and documenting their extinction, humanity had launched what they called Operation Lighthouse. "They're not just evacuating them," Ven continued, her voice cracking. "They're teaching them spaceflight, sharing medical technology, offering them a habitable world in human space. They're uplifting an entire species that can't possibly contribute anything to the galactic community." The archive keeper's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. "This violates every principle of non-interference we've established. The resource investment alone is staggering," interrupted Ambassador Lix, examining the data streams. "But that's not what truly concerns us, is it? We're afraid because they're proving all our assumptions wrong. Every law of social evolution we thought we understood." The chamber fell silent as a new alert flashed across the displays. The humans had just launched another initiative, this one aimed at preserving endangered languages across the galaxy. They were offering free quantum storage space to any civilization that wanted to preserve their cultural heritage. "Don't you see what's happening?" The quantum consciousness collective's avatar flickered intensely. "They're dismantling the very foundations of galactic society. Survival of the fittest, resource competition, technological leverage. Humans reject it all. And worse, they're proving these principles unnecessary." Security footage from across the galaxy played on secondary screens. Human medical teams treating victims of a plague on a world that had rejected their diplomatic overtures. Human engineers teaching advanced technology to species that had nothing to trade in return. Human scientists freely sharing research that could have been worth fortunes if kept secret. "Their influence is spreading," reported the hive mind of Sector 7. "We've detected a 300% increase in spontaneous altruistic behavior among member species. The Drachnid Empire just established their first refugee assistance program." The news sent shockwaves through the assembly. The Drachnids were renowned for their belief in absolute self-reliance. If even they were succumbing to human influence, the situation was worse than anyone had imagined. Perhaps, ventured a junior representative from the Meridian Consortium, we should consider that they might be right. The data shows that cooperative systems tend to silence, thundered High Commander Vex. This is exactly the kind of thinking we need to guard against. Next, you'll suggest we start helping people for no reason. But the damage was done. The gathered representatives shifted uncomfortably as they considered the implications. The humans weren't just changing how the galaxy worked. They were changing how species thought. A new alert drew everyone's attention. The humans had just announced their latest project, a massive network of free universities open to any species wanting to learn. No tuition, no obligations, just knowledge freely given. They must be stopped, whispered someone in the back of the chamber. Before it's too late. But how? Asked Ambassador Lix. How do you fight an enemy whose weapon is kindness? Who responds to hostility with help? Who gains strength by giving everything away? The Strategic Alliance presented their analysis. Traditional diplomatic pressure was useless against a species that didn't seek profit or power. Economic sanctions were meaningless against a civilization that freely shared everything they had. Military threats were pointless against a species that would probably offer medical aid to their own attackers. Perhaps, suggested the archive keeper, its voice heavy with resignation, we should consider the possibility that they aren't the crisis. Maybe our resistance to their way of thinking is. The suggestion hung in the air like a charged particle. Around the chamber, representatives began accessing their species' historical records, examining their own civilization's early development. How many had chosen competition over cooperation? How many had survived because of their ability to work together rather than their ability to stand alone? As if to punctuate the point, a final report flashed across the screens. The humans had just completed their first Friendship-class starship, a vessel designed specifically for first contact situations, equipped with libraries of cultural information, medical facilities for any known species, and massive holds full of humanitarian supplies. They weren't just changing the galaxy. They were redefining what it meant to be an advanced civilization. And deep down, every being in that bunker knew that there was no going back. The understanding. The day the galaxy finally understood humans began, ironically, with a catastrophe. A quantum cascade failure in the Orion sector had triggered a chain reaction of collapsing space-time anomalies. 3 major civilizations faced immediate extinction. The Galactic Council, for the first time in its history, found itself completely helpless. Then the humans arrived. Not just their emergency fleets or their rescue ships, all of them. Every human vessel capable of faster-than-light travel, from mighty cruisers to humble mining ships, converged on the Orion sector. They came without being asked, without coordination from their government, without any guarantee of success. Ambassador Lix watched from the Council's observation platform as the impossible unfolded. The humans were using their ships to create a massive containment field around the cascade failure. The energy readings were off the scale. They can't possibly hold it, Supreme Analyst Koff declared, his crystalline form vibrating with stress. The power requirements alone. They know, interrupted Ambassador Chen of Earth, her voice quiet but firm. Every ship captain out there knows they might not survive this. They came anyway. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans weren't just risking resources. They were willingly sacrificing themselves for species that had, until recently, regarded them with suspicion and fear. The quantum cascade grew stronger. Human ships began to fail, their hulls crackling with energy as they pushed their containment fields beyond design specifications. But for every ship that had to retreat, 2 more took its place. Why? The question came from the hive mind of Sector 7. Why sacrifice so much for others? Chen's response would later be carved into monuments across 1,000 worlds. Because that's what makes us human. The next 48 hours changed galactic civilization forever. The humans not only contained the Cascade failure, but also evacuated every inhabited world in its path. They worked without rest, without regard for political boundaries or past grievances. When their ships ran out of fuel, they used their own power plants to energize the containment field. When their shields failed, they used their hull plating. When that wasn't enough, they improvised solutions that defied conventional physics. But it wasn't just their sacrifice that shocked the galaxy. It was their effect on others. The Drachnids, renowned for their isolationism, opened their shipyards to repair damaged human vessels. The Mechanoids, who had never shown interest in organic life, devoted their entire processing network to calculating escape vectors for endangered planets. The Arcadians, who had built their society on self-reliance, volunteered their most advanced medical ships. The Archive Keeper's final report on the incident would become required reading at every diplomatic academy in known space. We have misunderstood humans from the beginning. We thought their kindness was a weapon. We thought their helping nature was a strategy. We were wrong. Their kindness is their evolution. Their compassion is their strength. And in showing us this truth, they have become the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because they might destroy us, but because they make us want to be better than we are. The quantum cascade was eventually sealed, though the effort cost hundreds of human lives and countless ships. But something else had been irreversibly changed. The galaxy had witnessed not just what humans would do to help others, but what that help could inspire others to become. In the months that followed, strange reports began flowing into the Council. The warrior clans established their first humanitarian division. The Trade Federation started offering free emergency transport to developing civilizations. The logical synthesis units began studying emotional intelligence. "Don't you see what they've done?" Ambassador Lix asked during the Council's assessment meeting. "They've proven that kindness isn't weakness, that compassion isn't inefficiency, that helping others makes you stronger, not weaker." The evidence was undeniable. Civilizations that adopted human-inspired cooperation programs were advancing faster than ever before. Species that had been bitter enemies for millennia were establishing cultural exchange programs. The galaxy was transforming, not through force or technology, but through the simple, dangerous idea that helping others was its own reward. The Galactic Council finally passed a resolution acknowledging what many had already realized. Humans weren't dangerous because of their technology, their resilience, or their resourcefulness. They were dangerous because they had introduced an idea that could never be unopened, like quantum patterns that could never be unobserved. They had shown the galaxy that there was another way to exist, that civilization could advance through cooperation instead of competition. That strength could be measured not in what you could take, but in what you could give. And that, perhaps, was the most dangerous idea of all. Because once you understood it, you could never go back to believing anything else.